Can Nivedita ma'am?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please allow me to take forward the session by introducing you, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Introducing our guest speaker is a great privilege. I know one is difficult, but through that she is a woman of virtue and simplicity. She is a living inspiration to the young ones. Our guest speaker is Miss Nivedita, works as Senior Education Manager for Cambridge International. Her role involved strategic planning and development of new PDQ qualification for teachers and leaders. Prior to this, she was Senior Education Manager, South Asia for Cambridge International. Her role involved strategic planning and execution of training and supporting wider teaching and learning activities for school in the region. She also works closely with the global teams on various educational initiatives. Prior to joining Cambridge, Nivedita ma'am was a chemistry teacher and head of professional development in prestigious schools in New Delhi. Her areas of expertise include pedagogy and quality assessment, professional development, school empowerment, improvement, planning and strategy, and community engagement. She likes going to the mountains and listening to the Indian music. Uh, I could request you, Dhanisha ma'am, please share some guideline to move forward the session.
Can you hear me, everyone? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear you.
I'm just going to screen share to just give you a heads up with the guidelines. Few guidelines just in case you miss out on some, right? Kindly rename yourself with your full name. Please mention your full name, whatever designation you have. You just need to mention your full name. Make sure that you're muted yourself. Question and answer session will happen at the end. So please remember to take down the questions as the session is happening and then put them at the end over the chat because continuously we wouldn't be able to monitor them, right? So write the questions only at the end with your name next to it so that we can take particular questions from specific people, right? We'll also take questions depending on the availability of time. So please be bearing with us on that. Feedback link will be provided to you at the end of the session, which you will have to fill in to receive your participation certificate. I hope these guidelines are clear to all of you. Back to Sarita ma'am. Thank you very much.
Now I request to Nivedita ma'am, please take over the session from here. We will request to
Hello.
Dhanisha. I request to Dhanisha ma'am, please share this PPT also.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. And I hope I'm not going to bore you over the next 40 minutes. Please feel free to ask me any questions in the chat as per the protocol that is there. And of course, after this presentation, you're most welcome to connect with me in case you have any further doubts. Whatever I'm going to discuss with you today is something that I have learned over my experience as a teacher, then as a trainer and working with Cambridge. So I'm not claiming that any of this is my knowledge, but I've just tried to put it together, and I'm going to also point you to different sources that are available for you in case you are interested in developing your teaching skills, practice, career, whatever. So as you know, I work for Cambridge Assessment International Education. I'm the Senior Education Manager there. And my primary task in this role is to design teacher training qualifications. So I was told by Utsav that it's a very diverse audience, but I'm going to be concentrating on teaching and learning. So please bear with me. You might find some content a bit repetitive. Maybe you have come across this. So if you want to share your ideas, if you want to share something new, please feel free to write in the chat and we can always have a discussion. So can I have my presentation, please? Could you put the first slide? You're on mute, ma'am.
Is it visible, ma'am?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Give me a minute.
So in the meantime, that ma'am is sharing the slides. It doesn't, is there a problem?
No, can you see my screen right now?
We can, but we can only see the folder. We can't see the presentation.
Can you see the presentation now?
No.
No.
I can't see. Is there anyone else who can see that? I mean, I can see the icon of the show, but it doesn't open.
Oh, okay. Ma'am, can you just talk a little bit? And in the meanwhile, I'll try to fix it.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Back to you.
So in the meantime, let me just tell you a little bit of Cambridge International. Are you aware of Cambridge Assessment International Education? You could just put on your cameras and raise your hands or something, or just, all right, lovely. I can see a lot of yeses in the chat, which is good. So you know Cambridge Assessment as providers of education. We run IGCSE boards, Cambridge Primary, Lower Secondary, A levels and all. But we are also doing a lot of work in teacher training and pedagogy, you know. So at the end of today's presentation, I'll take you to Cambridge website and I'll show you some resources which are available to you to go through free of cost. I mean, there's a lot of things with Cambridge that a school needs to buy, but then there's a lot of other stuff which is available free to you in case you want to make use of it. So, ma'am, if it is a problem, do you want me to share my...
If that's okay, because I'm not able to... give me 1 minute, ma'am. Just like just 1 more minute to try.
Okay.
And then if
otherwise you let me know and I'll
sure.
Yeah. So in today's presentation, so Sav told me that you pick a topic and I picked the topic of theory of visible learning. So any guesses? What do you think it refers to? What is theory of visible learning? What would come to your mind when you talk of visible learning? Anyone would want to share?
Is it visible now, ma'am?
Yes. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience.
No worries, no worries, no worries. Okay, could you go to the next slide, please? Right. So just to recap, though you are familiar with Cambridge, it is my professional duty to show you the Cambridge pathway. This is the Cambridge pathway from age 5 to 16, 18, in fact. So right from grade 1 to grade 12, but we now also have early years program, which is right now only available in India. So it's actually from ages 3 to 18. We need to update this infographic, which we will be doing next year when we do our early years globally rolling out. So these are the different qualifications we offer. I won't go into the details. If you're interested, you can always go to the website and check. All right, let's come to today's next slide, please, ma'am. Thank you. So let's start today's presentation as like my previous question. So what do you think is visible learning? I am not able to see the chat. Just give me a minute. Yes, okay. So it is teachers become evaluators of their own learning. Lovely. John Hattie, of course. So I have loosely based my presentation on Hattie's findings and also something that Cambridge has developed, which is called the Great Teaching Toolkit. So I have just meshed them up into a kind of coherent session, and I hope you find it useful. And if you need more information, I would be very happy to discuss that further with you. Next slide, ma'am. Okay, let's start with a small activity. When you observe your students in the class, how do you get to know whether a student is performing well or a student is not performing well? So let's concentrate on the low proficiency levels. What causes low proficiency in your students' work? Can you just give me some indicators of that? What do you think is the reason that some students perform low while others perform better? Any reasons? Okay, lack of motivation, distraction, all right, not focus, boring classroom teaching, lack of concentration, poor attention. Okay, anything else? Clarity of institution, laziness. Okay, there comes one, which is the weak base. Okay, perfect. So absolutely, I agree with all of these. These are some of the indicators of the reasons for low proficiency of students in the classroom. But so my question is, the next question to you is, ma'am, if you could go to the next slide. Absolutely, if the learning is not child-centered. So how do you know it? You listed so many factors. How did you get to know that these are the factors which may be responsible for low proficiency of a child? How did you guess these? Would you want to tell me? Okay, observation, correct. Behavior of the child, okay. Counseling is a remedy, definitely. Observing the work, performance, scores. Right, so if you look at these, you are observing something. And when are you able to observe something? When it is visible to you, right? You see some indicator in the behavior, in the score, in the way they score, and that writing skills, of course, talking to the child. So this is where the visibility comes in. If it is not visible, you would not know. Even if a child is just sitting quietly in your class, not responsible, even then he's sending you a visible signal that something is wrong, come and help me, right? So it all comes down to visibility. And that's what John Hattie did actually. He just, whatever teachers were doing in the classroom, which was not actually in print or not said very explicitly, he just studied and he brought that together. Can we go to the next slide, please, ma'am? Yeah, so coming to my next question. What should be visible? Like you guys have given so many indicators here, scores, observation, lack of attention, behavior. But in terms of teaching and learning, if you want the proficiency levels of your students to be better, what should be visible? Okay, behavior change, process of learning, instruction, active participation, child needs, all right? Perfect, you're spot on. So what Hattie says is that in terms of visibility, there should be visible learning and there should be visible teaching. So first of all, it is most important that the students' learning should be visible to teachers, so that they can know whether they are having an impact on the learning or not. But equally, it is also that the teaching should be visible to students so that the students know whether they are learning or not. And you help them become their own teachers, you know, and that is what is required, because that is what makes them lifelong learners. Now, that is something we want students to value, right? Now, how do you do that? Now, when the teaching is visible to the students, they know what to do and how to do it. And when they're doing it, their learning is visible to you as teacher, because you know that they're learning or not. So it's a two-way process. It is very dynamic. So, and to help that happen, the goals in the classroom have to be very explicit. You need to explain to your students very clearly, this is what you're going to learn, this is what I'm going to teach, and this is how we will know whether you have been successful or not. So that is what is the crux behind making learning visible. Next slide, ma'am. Right, so look at these couple of few statements that I picked up for you. So what teachers do matters. It is the teachers who make the difference. It is what teachers get the students to do in the class that emerges as the strongest component. That's what you are saying in the chat, in terms of activities, in terms of connection with the students, in terms of observations, in terms of testing, whichever strategy you pick up. What matters are conceptions of teaching, learning, assessments, and teachers having expectations that all students can progress. That is very, very important. So for a teacher, even that child who sits quietly at the end of the class should be equally important as the child who's overachieving in the class. So that is what the hallmark of a good teacher. Now, Hattie identified 6 factors which can contribute to visible learning and teaching in the classroom. And these are the child himself, the home, the school, the curriculum they are studying, the teacher, and also the approaches to teaching. So we are going to discuss a bit in detail about approaches to teaching later today. Let's move on to the next slide. Ma'am, next slide, please. Yeah. Now, so what Hattie did was, he did, as you know, he's a professor and director in Melbourne Education Research Institute at University of Melbourne. And he came out with 3 very, very influential books on visible learning and science of how we learn from 2009 to 2014. What he did was he picked a common metric called the effect size. And he examined a huge number of research studies and meta-analysis. Can anyone define effect size for me? Anyone who's familiar with effect size? Okay, ma'am, can you go to the previous slide, please? Somebody wants to see the previous slide? Yeah. Yeah, sorry, there was a lag. Yeah, okay, please move on to the next one now. Thank you. All right, somebody says pilot group. Okay, could you elaborate that a bit for me? Anyone else is familiar with the concept of effect size? All right, so effect size is basically, we are quantifying the size of difference between 2 groups. So it's a measurement like you have one control group and one group where you provide an intervention, and then you measure the attainment at the end for both of the groups, and then you use very complicated statistical formulas to calculate the effect size, which I'm not going to go into. But Hattie's effect size is between 0 and 1, and as I just show you in detail, can you go to next slide, please, ma'am? Yes. So now, if the effect size is 0, that means there is no effect on students' learning. If the effect size is between 0 to 0.4, then it is your normal school teaching, where a student at the beginning of year and at the end of year, the amount they are supposed to grow or they're supposed to learn, that is happening. So which is normal, which is like what we would call average. If it is more than 0.40, then we say that the student learning has accelerated, which means they are learning faster. And that is what Hattie calls zone of desired effects. If you want to accelerate the learning of students, then there are some factors that you need to take into account which contribute to this. And to give you an idea, an effect size of 1 means a student gains 3 years worth of cognitive growth in 1 year's time. So that is how Hattie has defined the effect size. Now, my next slide is an activity that you and I are going to do together. Next slide, please, ma'am. Yeah. All right. Now, take 2 minutes and rank these 10 effects based on Hattie's research. You have to give them values between 1 to 0, 1 being the highest and 0 being the lowest. And these are some of the approaches you can use in the classroom to improve your children's performance. So I'll give you 2 minutes to think about it. If you have a pen and paper at hand, just write the score. How much would you give to A, B, C, D, all the way up to J? Okay, let's do it. If you are feeling brave enough, feel free to write in the chat as well. You're most welcome to do that. Okay, I'll just start my stopwatch. Okay, remember, 1 is the highest and 0 is the smallest. So basically you have to give it values between 0 to 1. So it should be either 1 or in decimals. Okay, somebody's writing student-teacher relation. What value are you giving it? Do you think it's the highest? Okay, you say H1, so cooperative learning, you think it has the highest effect size. Okay. A3, what do you mean by 3? I'm assuming it's high, right? Concept mapping 1, okay. Student-teacher relationship, 8, okay. All right, 30 seconds to go, people. E is 0. Oh, hold back here. Perfect, I agree with you. You know, back when I was in school, there was this concept of ability teaching where you would have ability groups in a different class and they would perform better in examinations. Many schools experimented with that. Whether it gave results, I don't know. Maybe it worked sometimes, but maybe it was coincidental. But most of the times, I don't think that worked. Okay, let's look at the answers. Ma'am, can we go to the next slide? Can you see the answers? Yeah, you'll have to keep clicking it to see all the answers. Now, if you look at the values you gave and the order that is here, are there any surprises? Did anyone give highest to academic discourse? All right. I suspect not because I didn't see that in the chat. Right. So if you see this, academic discourse has the highest effect size, and that is what reassures you that teachers are here to stay. Nothing can replace a teacher. Children need a teacher to help them learn. But the trick point here is by academic discourse, we don't mean that teachers talking in the traditional way of, sage on the stage, but it is how you make your children think. Even if you're talking in the class, even if you are giving them direct instruction, are you making them think? Are you helping them learn for themselves? That is the key here. So actually, it is the way you give academic discourse, which is very important. And that is the most important factor in a classroom. Then comes the feedback. Unfortunately, this is one of the most neglected aspect of teaching in classroom. I'm telling you from my experience, I did my B.Ed, I taught for 20 years, but I was never clearly taught about the importance of the feedback. If you remember, the kind of report cards we used to get was can do better. That was a 3-word most easy remark for a teacher to write, because you have to write remarks for 50 students. Come on, we have to understand teacher problems as well. But it does nothing to help a student. Okay, I can do better, but what? What should I do better? How can I do it better? When should I do it better? So importance of feedback is the second most important factor. How you give feedback to your students is most important. And let me also clarify one thing. Feedback doesn't mean praise. We will see later in the presentation. Feedback doesn't mean you are doing very good. Now do this. You should always detach feedback from the praise. It should never be together. because then children make different connections with the feedback. The feedback should only be focused on their improvement. Reciprocal teaching, peer teaching, when they teach each other or when they teach you, that is another very important factor. Student-teacher relationships, many of you mentioned that, that's perfect. Concept mapping, cooperative learning, individualized instruction. Now, one would think that is very important. Parents ask for one-on-one coaching for their kids. They keep tuitions for their children. But if you see, the impact of that is very low as compared to some other strategies. Homework has a better impact than that. Ability grouping is only 0.12. And as somebody rightly said, hold back a year has actually a negative impact. So the policy of schools to not pass students actually backfires. They don't become any better. So that was a little sneak peek into the feedback. If you're interested in this, go to John Hattie's site and you will find a lot more there for you to read. All right, let's move to the next slide, please. So what should teachers do? How do they make sure that, the effect size in their classroom? I'm sorry, let me just check the chat, please. Okay, I didn't get this question. If it's a question, let's take this at the end. And I agree with you, feedback improves learner confidence and motivation to learn, definitely. All right, so John Hattie says that to be a successful teacher and to manage successful teaching and learning, a teacher has to develop the right kind of mind frames about their own role. So it is very critical that as teachers, we see ourselves as evaluators of learning of students, what I'm teaching, whether it's having effect on or not on the student, whether I can see that or not. So teachers should be vigilant to see what is working and what is not working in the classroom. They should use that evidence to inform their actions and their use of every possible resource, from peer teaching to feedback to flipped classroom, maybe, whatever approaches you want to use, you are most welcome to use them, but you need to see whether they are having an impact on your students' learning or not. When a teacher has an appropriate mind frame and they accordingly design their actions, then these achieve a positive learning effect. So we need to help teachers develop a mind frame in which they see it as their primary role to evaluate the effect on the learning. Next slide, ma'am. Okay, now let's see whether we have the right mind frame or not. Ma'am, it's John Hattie. I will just type it for you. Yeah, all right, there's some statements on your screen. Can you see that, ma'am? Could you click? No. Oh, it's not giving. The statements are not coming. Could you click on this? Oh no, okay. All right, sorry. I'll read them out and just go back to the previous slide and I'll let you know when to go. Okay, all right, sorry, you can't see the statements, but I'm going to read out and you have to tell me whether they are true or false. For every topic a teacher teaches, they should be able to list the prerequisite knowledge on which it depends. Do you think that's necessary? Connection to prior learning? Yes, true, absolutely. All right, the second one. Every lesson should start with a quiz to reactivate the previous knowledge. Do you think that's true? Is it possible? Can you do a quiz in every class? Absolutely. Somebody said not necessary. No, it is not necessary. There are different ways of linking it to the previous knowledge. Even while you are building up the lesson, you can link it to their previous knowledge. So it is not a set in stone that every class you have to have a quiz to retrieve their previous knowledge. As long as you are making connection to previous knowledge, that's fine. All right, next one. Teachers should ensure that academic success is compatible with students honoring their cultural competences, values, and identities. Do you think that's true? Yes, absolutely. It is very important for a student to ground their learning in their own competencies and values and identity. Students will only learn from a teacher whom they like. That's a tricky one. Do you think that's true? No, it is not. Absolutely. Sometimes we don't like the teacher, but we do say, oh, but he teaches very well or she teaches very well. So no, it is not necessary. If a teacher is doing a right thing, a student would respect them, irrespective of their individual liking or disliking. Every lesson should offer differentiations, different materials, tasks, or success criteria for different students. Is that true? Right. You can offer differentiation, but not different success criteria. The success criteria has to be same for all your students because you are in a class and you have common attainment standards for all. There may be students who achieve more than that, but that doesn't mean that you have to design separate success criteria for each of your students. No. Teachers should aim to praise all their students in every lesson. Yes or no? All right, we have a divided opinion there. I've got 2 yeses, 2 nos, 3 yeses, 3 nos. No, we don't. So if the work is poor or semi-compliant, then it is actually undermining your expectations. So you should not. Like I said earlier, praise has to be very different from the feedback. You can praise them for trying at the end of the class, but not for the work that they do. All right, last one. As much as possible, students should be encouraged to work independently on realistic problems. Is that true? All right, somebody says no. Okay, why do you think no? Well, you are right, you should not. I just wanted to know the reason. This works only when sufficient prior knowledge and connections have been established. If a child does not have proper prior knowledge, they will not be able to work independently on realistic problems. So you have to again judge. You have to see whether a child is able to work on that or not and accordingly take a call. So yeah, thank you for that. Sorry, the slide didn't show, but I hope you got the questions. Can we move to the next slide, ma'am? Right, so what should the teachers do? Cambridge has developed something called a great teaching toolkit, which says that the great teachers understand the content they are teaching and how it is learned. That is very important. Create a supportive environment for learning in terms of students' identities, cultures, classroom environment, behaviors for learning, what we call. Then manage the classroom to maximize opportunities to learn. You can have a very conducive classroom environment where children feel safe. They should not be scared to ask you a question, but at the same time, they should not be able to disrupt the learning in the classroom. And then present content, activities, and interactions that activate their students' learning. This is something Cambridge calls active learning. If you are a Cambridge teacher, you would be very familiar with this term. If you are not, it is something worth checking out. We focus all our curriculum and teacher professional development on the concept of active learning and assessment for learning. So if there's time and if you want to know more, I'll be happy to talk about that later. Can we move to the next slide, ma'am? Yeah, all right. Now, what should be the right approach to teaching for a good teacher? Let's say, have you come across as teachers any of these in your classroom or in your school? If you are not a teacher, just pretend you are a teacher for a minute and check. I learned something new about myself. Students' questions made me think. What kind of a teacher is this? What do you think? Anyone? All right, reflective and involved, excellent, open to learning, perfect. All right, second, my class scored the highest and my lesson plan was the best. What about this one? Ambitious, boastful, okay, correct. All right, competitive, self-obsessed, okay. Next one, my students didn't ask hard questions. My class didn't perform the worst in the school, so I'm okay. What is this one? Complacent, absolutely. All right, don't want to work hard maybe. Yeah. Average, laid back, perfect. Self-satisfied, absolutely, but that can be dangerous, right? Last one, I managed without preparing for the lesson. I didn't have to mark any work today. What is this one? Lazy, all right. Confident, least bothered, absolutely, least bothered. But honestly, when you have 40 periods to teach in a week and you go by a lesson where you didn't have to prepare, sometimes it is a respite. I've been through that and done that. So you feel so happy, oh, I didn't have to mark any work today, right? Anyway, let's come back. Ma'am, can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So the first one that you saw is mastery approach. Please ignore the word for coming here. I don't know why that is coming. It wasn't there in my slides. Just ignore this. So the first one is the mastery approach, where you want to demonstrate and achieve superior teaching quality. You want to do the best for your children, and you don't stop. You're a lifelong learner. You look for ways to improve yourself always. The second one is ability approach, where you are trying to learn and acquire professional understanding and skills. You want your work to be the best. The third one is work avoidance approach. Like some of you rightly said, you are complacent. You don't want to work hard, but at the same time, you don't want to show that you are inferior, that, okay, my kids were not the lowest, so I'm okay, that kind of a feeling. And the last one is ability avoidance approach, where, you just go through the day without making any effort. So obviously it's a no-brainer which approaches you would like to take to your teaching. It would have to be ability approach, and then move on to strive to be in the mastery approach area, right? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Right, so to achieve the mastery approach, these are the 5 attitudes and beliefs that John Hattie recommends for teachers. They would identify the most important ways to represent the subject they teach. They would constantly look for different ways of how can they make their topic interesting for their children, or how can you make your children understand an abstract topic, for instance. Expert teachers create an optimal classroom climate, again, like I said earlier, which is safe. Children are learning. It need not be very silent, pin drop silence, or a lot of written work. No, as long as healthy learning is taking place in any form, that is what you want. They monitor learning and provide feedback. This is a very, very strong pillar. You have to constantly monitor. As a teacher, when you are explaining something to children, their faces tell you whether they have understood or not. And as a chemistry teacher, I face that very often, because it is very difficult to teach the concept of atom and atomic structure when you can't even see it with your naked eyes, So you look at their faces and you know that, okay, I'm just talking in the air. They're not really understanding anything. I need to break it down. I need to make it simpler. And again, feedback. Feedback is very, very important. We can do a whole day session on feedback, but I'm not going to go into those details today, maybe some other time. Expert teachers believe all students can reach the success criteria, like I said earlier. Expert teachers influence a wide range of student outcomes, not solely limited to test scores. So exam is not the ultimate key, though unfortunately our education system is such that we still value 100% marks. And I have been seeing students with 95, 96% marks struggling to get a college of their choice. So that is really, really messed up. But I'm hoping that with the NEP coming in, that would change and students would find what they want to do in a more, more holistic and more fit for purpose way. Okay, let's move to the next slide, ma'am. So this is what some teachers do in the classroom. They clear learning intentions. They provide challenging success criteria. Okay, my next question to you, how would you differentiate between the two? So if I say learning intention and success criteria, what is the difference? Aren't these two similar? Anyone would like to share? Okay, can you hear me? It's gone awfully quiet. Yeah. Okay. Goals and steps. All right. Anyone would want to give me an example? Learning intentions and success criteria. All right. Objectives and outcomes. Excellent. Intentions in the content and context. Absolutely. And success criteria is the rubric or parameters. Absolutely. You're spot on. So learning intention is basically your planning, what you want to do in the classroom, and you share that with your students that you want to do it. And they know that this is what teacher is going to tell. But success criteria is for the student so that they understand whether they have been able to do what you wanted them to do or not. So for example, if I say in terms of science, let me say, not science would not be a good example. Let's say you are teaching grammar to students and you're teaching them to difference between nouns and pronouns. So your intention may be that children will be able to understand the difference between nouns and pronouns or adjectives and adverbs. But for a student, it would be that in a given paragraph, they are able to identify which is the noun and which is the pronoun. If they are able to do that, if they are able to list that, then they will know that they know the concept. So I hope it's a very basic example, but I hope it clears the difference. So success criteria would always be something which a student is able to apply themselves. That this, I have done this, so I am through this part of the topic that teacher has taught. Yes, absolutely. It could be called a self-test. Thank you. Then the next one is range of learning strategies. You provide them a range of learning strategies. Please be careful. I am not referring to learning styles because that theory does not hold anymore. So we don't talk of visual learners, auditory learners, or kinesthetic learners anymore. Of course, these could be a part of your activities. You could have hands-on activities. You could have your children moving around. You could play a podcast for them. You could show them a video, but we don't anymore classify them into learning styles. So you should give them a variety of learning strategies, learning tools, and at any given time, they might prefer one or the other. Then, of course, we keep coming back to the feedback, but the last one, visibly learn themselves. So what this refers to here is in your classroom, have some visible ways of showing children their progress, and also because that reflects on your progress as well. So you can have mind maps, you can have charts, you can have reflective journals where children could write, you could write in your reflective journal to see how your teaching is having an impact on them. Next slide, please, ma'am. And when the teachers do this, then the students are able to understand their learning intentions. They are challenged by the success criteria. They develop a range of previous slide, ma'am, not this one, please. Yes, develop a range of learning strategies. They know when they are not progressing. They will ask for feedback from you, and they will be able to teach themselves. So those are some approaches that teachers should use in the classroom. Next slide, please, ma'am. So how do you do that? How do you build up these approaches? Let's look at that briefly and quickly. So the Great Teaching Toolkit, which I mentioned earlier, says you need to understand the content. You definitely need to have your subject knowledge. That's a big yes. You can't do without it. You need to know how the curriculum is sequenced. You need to know what tasks and assessments to use. And you also need to know how children think, how they build misconceptions, and you need to address those misconceptions. This is a very powerful technique for teaching children. I'll give you a simple example. In fact, I can ask you that question as well. We all love diamonds, right? Diamonds are beautiful. What would happen if you put a diamond in a gas flame? Would anyone want to answer that? Suppose by mistake, somebody drops their diamond in fire. What would happen? All right, I would request any chemistry teacher to avoid answering, please. Anyone? What is diamond? Okay, let me break down the answer for you now. Diamond is made of what? Anyone? Carbon. What happens when you put carbon in fire? It burns, right? It burns just like your coal burns. Eventually, your diamond is also going to burn and produce carbon dioxide and water. Not water, sorry, only carbon dioxide. Sorry, my bad. So, and this is a question I always ask my grade 9 students when I teach them chemistry. And 99% of the time, the answer is if you put diamond in fire, nothing is going to happen to it. So, because somewhere children build misconceptions, and it is very important for a teacher to burst those. You have to learn, you have to teach them to think scientifically, logically, analytically, to be able to build strong foundations. Yeah, burn. Yes, of course, it will burn. Thank you. Next slide, please. Right. Creating a supportive environment. Now, we talked about this earlier. So what does it entail? So it's like relationships with students, cultural sensitivity, student-student relationship, which is very important, promoting learner motivation, high expectations, because bullying in the class between students is a big problem for schools. So that is very important for a teacher to be cognizant of, and also to have some basic skills of how to avoid that in the classroom. Next slide, please. Maximizing opportunities to learn. So managing time and resources, clear and consistent rules, expectations and consequences. And these work best when you help the students to design them. So if your students come up with the rules in the classroom, then they are more likely to follow them. Although you'll always find some who won't, but most of them won't. Preventing and responding to disruption, showing awareness. So this is where a little bit of inclusion comes in. Next slide, ma'am. Yeah. Activating hard thinking. This is where active learning comes in. So how you structure your tasks in the classroom, how do you provide scaffolding, how do you know when a child needs support, explaining how to connect ideas, questioning. Questioning is my favorite way of conducting a classroom, as you can tell from the way I conduct my session, because I believe children learn best when you pick their curiosity. When you ask them questions and you make them think, then they build connections and they can link to their previous knowledge and they can build new learning. So embedding, practicing, reinforcing, spacing learning, giving them time, and then building independence, supporting metacognition. Metacognition is one skill which I think should be built in classroom right from early years, because if you make children independent from that age, then as they grow up, they know how they learn, and then they use that to support their own learning. Next slide, please, ma'am. All right, so one tool that I want to discuss at the end is reflective practice. I'm a big fan of reflective practice, but before I go to it, would anyone want to share what does it mean to be a reflective practitioner? What is reflection? What do we mean by reflection? Anyone? Self-analyze, absolutely. Self-introspection, and doing what? Developing perspectives, perfect. To know what we have learned, okay. And then do what with that? Constantly checking if something works or not. Yes, absolutely. Introspection, reflection, absolutely. Thank you. Those are all what I want to tell you. So you already know, so it'll help me go over it quickly. Next slide, please, ma'am. This is a definition of reflective practice by Finlay. Learning through and from experience towards gaining new insight of self and practice. This is what you are saying in the chat: improvement, reflecting, informing what you do in future. Next slide, please, ma'am. Absolutely, self-analysis and understanding where one is lacking. Right, how to reflect. So like you said already, I'll just quickly go through this. Reflecting your practice, which helps you to make links from one experience to the next, and that makes sure that your students make maximum progress. And ultimately, reflection would help all your students to learn more effectively because you can meet their needs. Yeah, and do you think reflection is a skill that can be easily built in? Yes, it can, definitely. Thank you. Next slide, please, ma'am. Right. Sorry. Yeah. So this is one of my favorite reflective cycle, which actually made it very easy for me to learn how to reflect. And now reflection is an integral part of what I do. So even when I'm talking to you after the session, I'm going to think, what did I do right? Could I improve it in some way? How will I do differently next time? So it becomes an inbuilt thing, and not just in the context of your work, even in context of your personal relationships, you know, at home, with your parents, with your children, with your spouse, that was my behavior okay? Could I do something differently? Did I do something wrong? So it becomes a part of you once you start reflecting on things. And this is my favorite tool for reflective cycle, because Gibbs has broken it down into very simple things. What happened? So that's the incident. What were you thinking and feeling when that happened? What was good and bad about that experience? And what sense can you make of it? I mean, what was good, what was bad, and so what? What is the implication? And you identify what was not correct about the situation. So what do you need to do to improve it? And then how will you improve it? And once you do that, you go back to the cycle, because the next time your behavior would be changed because you've already reflected on it. So use it in your classroom, and you will see the difference it makes to your teaching or learning practice. And this is not just for teachers, this is also for anyone who's trying to learn anything. Right, now in the end, I would just like to show you some of the Cambridge tools. Next slide, please, ma'am. So whatever I have talked to you today about is grounded, and it's already a part of something called Cambridge Teacher and School Leader Standards. We develop these standards for qualities of teachers which we think are necessary to become an effective teacher. So there are 8 standards, and each of these 8 standards is further divided into learning statements. These are available on our website. These are free of cost. So if you want to check or self-test yourself on your effectiveness as a teacher, download the standards, go through each statement, and there are also accompanying RAG grids with these. You can actually test yourselves as red, amber, and green according to your strengths. And so these RAG grids will help you understand your weaknesses and where you need to improve further. So I will share the presentation with you. Ma'am already has it. And otherwise, just go to Cambridge Assessment International Education website and search for Cambridge Teacher and Leader Standards, and you will get it. We have standards for teachers, and we also have standards for school leaders to define what makes an effective teacher and an effective school leader. Next slide, please, ma'am. These are some resources that I compiled from Cambridge that are available to you free of cost. If you click on the first link, that will take you to the support site, which will show you all the resources that are available. Oh, perfect, you're there. Right, could you scroll down, please? So there's a video support for teachers that you could want. This particular page has a lot of material on curriculum teachers as well. So those who teach Cambridge will have more access to this. Ma'am, could you go back and click on the second link, please? Yeah, now this is something which is freely available to you. If you come down, you can see the links. Getting started with key concepts, active learning, assessment for learning, language awareness, mentoring, metacognition, reflective practice, peer observation, and evaluating impact. These are short booklets from anything between 8 to 20 pages with videos, with links, and with activities in them. download them, go through them at your own convenience, and see how they will make difference to your teaching experience or teaching practice. Next one, ma'am. Cambridge Personal Style Questionnaire is a paid service, but it is not very expensive. If you want to recommend this to your students, because this is for schools as well as for teachers. As teachers, it takes you through a psychometric test, which gives you different aspects of your personality and gives you inputs as to how you could improve. So this could be like time management, talking, your relationships with your peers, intrapersonal skills, and so on and so forth. So this is another tool which you could explore. Great Teaching Toolkit is from where I took the content which I shared with you earlier. We have the whole book in the form of different chapters here. So those of you who are interested, just go and download it. Yes, it's the link that ma'am is clicking on. You can just download and have a look at it. And again, education briefs are brief documents that we have created on key pedagogical areas. Again, you can see there's on active learning, assessment for learning, bilingual learning in case your students are not English speakers, inclusive education, and we keep coming up with the new ones. So there is learner well-being. Faculty of Education in Cambridge is doing a very interesting project on learner well-being. It is called a Positive Peace Project, where they teach children in the classroom to how to manage peace. And it is very interesting because when we say peace in the classroom, it comes to our mind that children are not fighting. They're not bullying each other, but it's much, much deeper than that, you know. So very interesting read. Have a look. Metacognition, oral skills, oracy, promoting positive school climate, and school evaluation. How, as a school leader, you can evaluate the performance of your school. And then in the end, teacher professional development, what should be the approach to PD and how you can do that. So these are all freely available documents. It's not costing you a penny. Just download it, have a look. You might find something interesting which might be helpful. And last but not the least, this is my team where I work. We offer professional development qualifications to teachers. These are diploma courses for 1 year. You have the diploma broken down into certificate and diploma. A certificate course would be a 6 months course. If you are interested, please explore. And I'm very happy to say that Rahul International School is going to be very soon a PDQ center. So in case you are interested to take any of these qualifications, do get in touch and we'll be happy to support you. Next slide, ma'am. Yeah, these are the 4 areas currently where we offer professional development qualifications: teaching and learning, teaching with digital technologies, bilingual learners, and educational leaderships. I'll be happy to discuss in detail if you are interested. So please do get in touch in case you need more information. You can write to info@cambridge.org. Next slide, please, ma'am. Yeah. So that brings me to the end. I think I'm bang on time, 11:59, well done. If you have any questions, please just type them or unmute yourselves and ask, and I'll be happy to talk about these.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful session. Now we begins with the Q&A session. I request you to all the participants, please drop down your question on chat box. Please drop down your question on the chat box.
All right, you know what this means? Either you have understood everything and you liked it, or you didn't like it at all and you haven't understood anything. So which one is it?
We have one question, ma'am.
Right. How can a teacher plan effective lessons? Wonderful. If you go to John Hattie's website, there is a summary of his visible learning book. There's a book. It's a few pages summary, and it gives you the steps to planning lesson. Hold on, let me check. If I have it, I'll show you. Just give me 1 minute. This one. Yes. And can I share my screen for a minute?
Sure, ma'am.
Just so it looks like this. Summary of Visible Learning for Teachers by John Hattie. It gives you what is visible learning, visible teaching and learning, mind frames. Like I said earlier, I based my presentation today on this. Then if you come down, it takes you to preparing the lessons. There are 4 main parts of an effective lesson: prior achievement, that is the connect to the previous learning, what you want them to learn, how would you give them new learning, what would be your teaching strategies, what would be the learning strategies for students, and of course, one of the most important thing is teacher collaboration. And this is a part of reflective practice, where you are not fighting your battle alone. Find your peers in the school, discuss with them, because sometimes people give you feedback about yourself which you don't know, and they tell you that, look, this is what I've observed in your lesson, and you would think, oh, I never thought of that. This is something new. So that gives you a lot of scope for improvement. And then of course you can always find a mentor in your school, a senior colleague, an experienced colleague who's good, and you could ask them to observe your lessons. You could discuss your lesson plans with them, and they would give you constructive feedback. But all this has to be done in a very, very non-threatening and conducive way. You cannot be scared that your observations would be the basis for your appraisal. It doesn't mean, I don't mean that. So that is a totally different thing, but it helps. The collaborative learning is the best way to do that. And that is also the best way to plan your lessons. And because, collaboration among students is also equally important. If you go to Cambridge website again, you would find some lesson plan templates there. If you are teaching Cambridge, you would have access to schemes of work, which give you lesson plan templates, and you can just play around with them, add something that you like, delete something that you don't like, and use them. But these are the basic structures of a good lesson. If you go further, he also tells you more about success criteria, challenge, breaks it down. So you see learning intentions and success criteria. Then he also talks about the flow of lesson, differentiation, your expertise, what materials you can use, and of course, metacognition. It is very, very important how you can build metacognitive skills in the students. And this should be inbuilt in every lesson. It is not something you are teaching them separately. It is through your subject you have to teach them how to develop metacognitive skills. So something for us to learn ourselves before we can teach children. But you would find this document on Google. It is very easy to find it. Just search for John Hattie Visible Learning and you will get the document. How to make interactive teaching learning in higher education, that is a challenge. However, I would direct you to PDQs, because somehow in higher education, I may be wrong in my understanding, but my understanding is that if you have a PhD or if you are very, very strong in your subject, you can teach higher education. But the fact is that you need to know the concept of pedagogy even for teaching higher education students, because you have all that knowledge, but if you don't know how to communicate it to the students, then it's no good. They will not understand, So I think it is equally important for higher education teachers to use active learning and assessment for learning strategies in their classrooms. Of course, I'm not talking at the research level when the students become self-responsible and they do self-teaching, but I'm definitely at undergraduate level, it works very, very well. Right. Can these diploma certificates offered by Cambridge later lead to a degree? We're working on that, yes. Not in India, unfortunately, but in UK, yes. Anglia Ruskin University offers a pathway, and we are also planning to come up with teaching certifications ourselves, not through Government of India, but hopefully through University of Cambridge soon, but that is work in progress. Watch out this space. We'll come back to you. Are there any online webinars organized by Cambridge that we as Educate? Well, there's load. If you go to our website, there's a whole corner which was also for teaching and learning during COVID and teaching and learning after COVID. So if you open them, you will find tons of webinars, podcasts, articles, which you can find useful. What about catering to students with special needs? Yes, every teacher needs to have a little bit of knowledge about inclusion. However, if you have a special need child which needs clinical intervention or specialized support, then of course, as a teacher, you would not be able to help them. And then you need to have special intervention there. You need to refer them to your special education needs department. However, these days, every curriculum, every other education organization recommends inclusive education. So those children are also a part of class, but they do need specialized interventions, which you might not be able to provide, and that's all right. There are other experts to do that. How can we relate the term reflective practitioner with visible learning and teaching? Okay, I can give you one example. So if you keep a reflection journal and you write your daily experience, just 2 minutes, what went well in your class, what didn't go well in your class, and you keep it. That is your visible learning tool, because when you revisit it as after 6 months, you will see, okay, on this day, this had happened, and you will revisit that, So visible learning is all about keeping that in front of you so that it reminds you to improve all the time. The other way of doing it is if you've made a lesson plan, at the end of the lesson plan, we put a column always, evaluate your lesson. And just you take 2 minutes after your lesson to write, this went well, this did not go well, I need to do this differently next time, how you would do it. That is what is visible learning and teaching to me. So I hope that helps. Right. Any other questions? Or I'm sure you must be bored of my voice now. So happy to end the session here.
Thank you so much, ma'am. On behalf of all the team, I would like to thank you for this session. And it was a really informative session in a true sense. I am pretty sure that the precious knowledge you have given to all of us will definitely help us. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Like I said, I just shared. It makes all the more difference if the session is in person, but we have to make the best of online, isn't it? So thank you so much for listening to me. I hope it made sense, and I hope you will be able to take away some tools and techniques from what I've shared with you today. Thank you so
yes,
much.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
The feedback link is posted on the chat. Please, everyone who has attended the session, please click onto the link and fill in your feedback to avail the certificate for the session. Only and only if you fill your feedback form will you be issued a certificate. So please make it a point to copy the link onto your tab or wherever, and then just fill in your details to issue your certificate. Any questions, anyone? Can you see the link? Thank you. I will just check that, please.
Also, the PPTs will be shared of today's event to everyone. It will be made available on the website. So you need to go on the website of Rahul College of Education. By day after, it will be there available.
Sorry, sir, could you please repeat the question again?
The PPT of today's event will be available on the website on
Yeah.
Rahul Education.
Yeah.
After the event, we'll be uploading all of them together.